But I do want to look at the story we began with, Kemi Badenoch having a bit of a Christmas surge as the Tories are managing to claw back to just 3 points behind Reform UK. I mean, that kind of headline would have been unthinkable, wouldn't it, half an hour ago when, Reform, newish party, I know they have a different sort of, UKIP, Brexit party, there's been sort of various types of parties with Nigel Farage in them over the years, but nonetheless, they sit there with 5 MPs and a commanding lead in the polls. Only a month ago, Reform led by 7 points. Now, Farage's charge has stalled and any path to number 10 could hinge on a deal with the Tories. But then, of course, you've got the left as well. There's lots of things going on with the Green Party. What's happening with the Labour front bench? Will they morph into something slightly more left-wing and more palatable to those on the left? Let's start by speaking with Martin Abrams, Green Party councillor in Streatham. Martin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
It's interesting, isn't it? Whether you're left-wing or right-wing, I mean, what we're seeing in the last sort of year or so is a complete change in the landscape of the two-party political system.
Well, I think we are, and I'm not sure our electoral system can actually cope with the ongoing sort of turmoil that we're seeing, particularly at the centre and the right of British politics, because what's happening, Ian, is that Britain's old politics are essentially collapsing under their failure to deliver for people. And, the polls today that suggest that Reform UK and the Conservatives are neck and neck, whilst Labour is languishing in lower and lower support. And both main parties are struggling to articulate, really bold solutions to the issues facing everyday people. And it's encouraging to see that the Green Party is surging, record polling. And, that's because people are looking for a credible alternative that actually recognises and tackles the crises of our time.
And it's interesting because in this particular, I know polls go up and down and, they change often depending on who put them together. But on this one, Labour fall into 4th position behind the Greens. Now, I say this kindly, Martin, you're a Green Party supporter, but other than you and my mate Smelly Ken, I don't know anyone else who votes Green. So there's 2 people I know, but you're ahead of Labour in the polls.
Well, there's an increasing number of people that are going to be voting Green, and we're going to see that in May 2026. We'll see it in forthcoming elections. I'm sure the Scottish and the Welsh elections as well will return record numbers of Green politicians as well. And that's because people are looking for that credible alternative. People don't just want the chaos and the culture wars. And I think whilst Nigel Farage, you've got to recognise, whilst I have literally nothing in common with Nigel Farage politically, he is a talented political player. But people are now starting to ask the question: Is he going to fix what is actually broken? Because all he ever talks about is immigration. And I'm sorry, whilst that is an important issue, and my view is that we need a much more humane immigration system that puts people at its heart. There are way more important things out there that people are concerned about, such as the cost of living crisis, such as access to healthcare, such as housing. So he doesn't really seem to have the answers to those crises facing the country.
But is he not playing in the same way that your leader, Zach Polansky, is kind of... And there's people have drawn a certain synergy between the two. There's the kind of green populism, the conservative populism from Farage, green populism from Zach. It's a kind of similar game, isn't it, that you sort of appeal to those very raw areas of people's ideology and you grow them a little bit, you pepper on a bit of hyperbole and, you run with it. And so net zero and areas such as that would be the sort of the green fascination. Mr. Farage, immigration and things such as that. Is that not the era we're now in? Are you both not, to kind of put it the way you've put it, guilty of the same thing?
Well, I think actually the main priority for the Green Party at the moment is the cost of living crisis and how unequal our society has become. When you've got 50 families in the UK hoarding the same amount of wealth as the poorest 50%. So we're talking 50 families have more wealth than more than 35 million people in the UK. There is something deeply wrong with our society. And, whilst...
So would you just nick the money off people who've done better in life?
Well...
Because they're not rich. The people that are poor aren't poor because those people are rich.
Well, it's about equality, Ian, and the fact is there's enough wealth and resources in our world for everyone to have a decent...
So you'd have to steal the money
decent standard of living. No, it's not about stealing the money, Ian. It's about redistributive policies. And if
that's a polite way of saying stealing the money, isn't it?
Listen, you need to look up the group Patriotic Millionaires.
I'm familiar with. We've had them on the programme. They're happy to give more money.
They're absolutely desperate to pay in more money to our society to make our society a better place, not just for them, but for everyone.
And they can do that voluntarily, of course, already.
Well, they can, but it's much better if there is a system that is redistributive and allows some of the poorest people to have a decent roof over their head, to be able to put food on the table, and to be able to have a decent standard of living. We're in 2025. We're the sixth richest country in the world. There should be no people struggling to heat or eat this Christmas. And unfortunately, there's millions and millions of people that are going to be really, really worried about how they're going to pay their bills, pay for food, pay for everything over the course of Christmas. So that's why the Greens are polling very well, because they're talking about these things. They're talking about the real issues that matter to people.
In terms of the kind of notion behind this particular poll, which is sort of hints at parties getting together. So if, for example, the Tories and Reform were to get together, that would be a big force against Labour, and they would doubtlessly win an election. However, if Labour and the Greens and possibly the Lib Dems were in a kind of a pact, and yes, the Lib Dems do still exist, I had to remind everybody that a little earlier, they're still around. If they got together, that would potentially give the right a bloody nose. Is that something, as a Green politician, that you would endorse?
I mean, I'm not an official spokesperson for the Green Party, but I can safely say that, Zach Polanski has already stated that he would not go into a electoral pact with the Labour Party.
They all say that, though, don't they?
Keir Starmer's leadership.
Till somebody offers him a nice limo and a big red box, he'd be in there like a robber's dog, wouldn't he?
Listen, Zach Polanski is not in it for himself.
He's an actor, isn't he? Of course he is.
That's patently clear.
He loves it. He loves it. They all love it. Come on.
Listen, the fact
he wants to be a big star. He wants to be on the world stage, pressing the flesh with the leaders around the world.
At the moment, under Keir Starmer's leadership, the Labour Party are much more closely aligned with Reform UK than they are to the Green Party.
That's interesting.
So I think it's clear that Keir Starmer's days are numbered as a leader. His unpopularity is at record levels.
I think we can all agree on that.
The new year is almost certainly going to bring a leadership challenge.
Certainly
within Labour. And, it'll be interesting to see who takes over. There's talk of Wes Streeting, there's talk of Andy Burnham, there's talk of
Angela Rayner making a
Angela
trip
Rayner
back.
and a number of other
She's more your cup of tea, though, isn't she, Angela Rayner? You could work with Angela Rayner as one of the leaders.
Well, listen, Angela Rayner is from a more traditional Labour background than Keir Starmer. I think she actually understands, where the Labour Party has come from and the importance of the trade union movement. Yeah. But she is also intrinsically linked with Keir Starmer's government
and creative accounting as well.
Albeit she's not in it at the moment, but it's going to be very interesting. 2026 is going to be a fascinating year.
It really is.
It's going to be a very successful year for the Green Party, and politics is going to change probably beyond recognition.
We absolutely agree on that. I can't wait for May's elections, I have to say. I'm more excited about that than I am Christmas, frankly. So we'll look forward to it. We'll speak many times, I'm sure, before then. Martin, thank you, sir. Martin Abrams, Green Party councillor for Streatham, with us on the programme. Let's speak to Gawain Towler, political strategist and Reform UK board member. Gawain, firstly, your assessment, I'm bound to ask. I know you were listening to some of that conversation with Martin. What did you make of what you just heard?
Well, I think it's good to be ambitious. And I think that something... my favourite line, I think, was the idea that that Reform are more aligned to Labour than the Green Party are.
That was a bit of a howler, that one, wasn't it? Goodness me.
But okay, as I say, it's good to have ambition. And yes, it's fascinating. But I think one of the things he was saying isn't true. And that is that what we're seeing now is a fragmentation on the left and the right. But I think on the left, the fragmentation is far greater with the Labour Party, the Greens, the Lib Dems, and Hezbollah, and the Gaza independents. So there's a far greater level of split. But I've come to the conclusion that what we're seeing is, you know how after Christmas, when you're tidying up the mess, it looks a hell of a lot messier initially than when you finish. You start with one thing, It becomes very messy, and then it tidies up again. I would suggest that what we're seeing is a realignment rather than a permanent fragmentation. And I look at Northern Ireland to see what happened there over a period of time, where the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists have vanished from the scene to be replaced by other parties. There was a period where Sinn Féin and the SDLP were vying, and then Sinn Féin took over, and so on and so forth. So I would say the likelihood is we're seeing a realignment rather than a plain fragmentation.
It's interesting looking at this Ashcroft polling, and I know it's Ashcroft, and one could, argue, well, look who's done the polling. There is always
it's not so much look who's done the polling. Look at the rating of that pollster.
In terms of as a trusted pollster, you mean?
Trusted pollster, yes, it is at the very bottom.
Okay.
But I have a policy that you should never believe a poll that makes you smile, nor should one believe necessarily a poll that makes one weep. The two things are, it's like Kipling, and you take failure and success and treat both imposters the same. Yeah. And I think that's a point to make.
But Gawain, is it fair to say though that I think you're right on that, of course, but if you take the sort of collective nature of recent polling, it does seem to suggest that unless the Tories and Reform got into bed together in some way, shape or form, then neither party could win an outright majority in a general election.
Well, I beg to differ, and I wouldn't I? But if you look at the Lord Ashcroft poll, which concluded on the 15th of December, since then there have been 4 other polls. The most recent, on the 17th, had Reform on a 15 points lead from Find Out Now, a 9 points lead from More in Common, a 10 points lead from YouGov. I think Lord Ashcroft's poll is definitely an outlier. That doesn't mean that there isn't a trend, and I do think there was a flattening over the autumn and coming into winter for the Reform thing, but it seems to be picking up. The most recent is 33%, with the Tories down on 18. So whilst if I was Kemi, I would be holding fast to the Lord Ashcroft poll, it would be possibly foolish to do so and set your strategy based on it. We heard, did we not, the vice chairman of the Tory party talking about doing possible deals. It is fascinating to note that in the last 2 years, I've heard this idea floated time and time and time again, but it's never floated by Reform. We saw what the Tories did to the Brexit Party, and what the Brexit Party did in 2019. There was no deal done there, but there was certainly never any thanks. And I think you saw what happened to the Lib Dems when they went into a deal with the Tory party. We have no reason to trust them. And it cannot be in either our or the country's interest to bring back a bunch of people who have failed the country so devastatingly over the last 20 years.
And I think there's certainly a lot of sense from our listeners this afternoon on exactly that point. Gawain, thank you as ever for your time. Gawain Towler, have a great Christmas, Gawain. Political strategist, Reform UK board member. He knows his way around this kind of area of political life. I still come back to what looks, as we sit here today, like an inevitability. That Tories and Reform will have to have some kind of pact. Then, of course, there's events well, events, dear boy, and all that business. There's that to contend with. Between now and 2029, you'll have some very high-profile figures who simply won't be there anymore. It seems unthinkable now because they'll have quit or they'll have been fired. There might have been a scandal. They might have just got fed up. They might have been demoted. There could be all sorts of reasons, but neither Reform nor the Tories will look exactly like they look today. Things will change. Different people's stars begin to rise. Others begin to fall. Either way, whatever way you slice it, I still come back. I know Gawain resisted this and he acknowledged that he would say that, wouldn't he? However, Reform and the Tories will have to get together at some point. Would you concur with that?